This is the first installment of the Eddie Holzman podcast. Very creative name, right? There is no theme to this. It's really just me talking about things that I genuinely find interesting. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the state of American political leadership. Now, before anyone blows a gasket because I brought up politics, in fact, politics is something I majority stay off of. But in this format, I have the ability to thoroughly express my ideas and thoughts without being interrupted. So in this episode, I'll give my thoughts on the current state of political leadership in the United States. For those that might be interested, I'm an independent and a moderate when it comes to the political spectrum, which I think is somewhat arbitrary. Nevertheless, I will always likely be an independent. I've said this since I was in high school. When someone asks me, am I a liberal, am I a conservative, am I a Democrat, am I a Republican? And although the United States currently runs a two-party system, is that I'm an independent because I prefer to think for myself. I will start somewhat wider and bigger picture and then narrow in. This republic and democratic experiment we call the United States of America is only about 244 years old. To put that in context, if the average person in a wealthy country nowadays lives to be 80 years old, that is 3 people plus a 4-year-old old for how long the United States has been around, which compared to other countries and cultures like China and India that have been around for thousands of years, America is a very young country and the oldest modern democracy in the world. So the concept of self-governance and democracy is very new in the development of human civilization, meaning we are still figuring it out. And when I look at this democratic experiment, the document that lays out the formal rules is the Constitution of the United States. One of the features of the Constitution is the distribution of powers among multiple branches of government, meaning the executive, legislative, and judicial system. Built into this are checks and balances that seek to distribute and decentralize power as much as possible to prevent dictatorships and authoritarian rule. And quite frankly, given people that have risen to positions of political power and influence in the country within recent years, I was very thankful that distribution of power is built into that document. I mind you that this was done without the internet, that with the founders of the nation, who I think all things considered, did an excellent job of peering into the soul of human nature and drafting a document that has held up over hundreds of years, allowed a system in the United States in a short amount of time to rise as a global superpower and generate a level of wealth and prosperity the world has never seen. Now, were the founders perfect? No, they were human and had hypocrisy built in the form of slavery and having other marginalized and disenfranchised groups not being endowed the same inalienable rights. And we have done what we can to expand those rights so that all human beings, no matter religion, race, creed, gender, or any other superficial characteristic, is accepted and treated equally under the law, at least in theory and on paper. I think it was the comedian Louis C.K. that had a joke that was something to the effect of, we really didn't start having democracy till like 1964 with the passing of the Civil Rights Act. So democracy and equality under the law is a new thing in human civilization. And I think one of the most important developments in human history. Another aspect of our culture is the concept of individual freedom and rights. The individual and their sovereignty are of highest value, and that document, the Constitution, does what it can to decentralize all political power down to the level of the individual citizen so they can determine their fate and the future of the nation. With all that being said, I don't think the founders of the nation saw that the country would expand to over 328 million people and have information technology and social media, which allows instantaneous communication across international borders that has revolutionized modern communication, the global economy, and the political process because of the extreme amount of data and rate of information exchange taking place constantly in our modern world and our globalized economy and culture. Information technology and the internet are very powerful tools, which if Uncle Ben from Spider-Man said, with great power comes great responsibility. The thing about that is many people have access to these powerful tools but are not responsible, and many people often abuse power. The thing is, some people, domestic governments, foreign governments, political groups, and anyone else wired into the internet, do what they can to use social media to manipulate public opinion and influence popular culture. The reality is nowadays, for better or worse, the majority of culture is programmed through social media. The good, the bad, and the ugly. If you had told me in 2000 there would be a technology that allows the instantaneous communication between people from around the world and the country, I would have said, oh, people would be a lot more empathetic and understanding with one another because they can talk to each other at all times. Wrong. I'm not an expert, but many people in the political realm, which I'm not, say the country is more polarized than ever. In my sense of the situation, that's just my sense, is there's a degree of truth in that. The thing is, rarely do extremes ever solve problems. It's usually a balance and compromise of both in the middle that get things done, things move forward, and problems solved. In fact, on paper, I support political parties, but in practice, I don't think they work. Both Republicans and Democrats, as well as established media such as CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, have polarized the nation over the past 25 years and divided the nation. To me, back when the founders of the nation wrote the Constitution with feathers and ink, the ability to communicate and exchange information was very difficult. So to me, the way to filter the political will of the nation was to have political parties represent the interests of their jurisdiction and target population, because it was difficult for people to communicate and exchange information back then. Nowadays, we have the internet, which, at least in theory, gives individuals the ability to broadcast their opinions and ideas across the country and globally to influence the culture and political will. To me, individuals should express their interests and opinions, and kind of the Venn diagram of consensus that forms around that can be the basis of policies and acceptance of how to move forward for different topics and issues. In fact, some of the founders of the Constitution and nation, explicitly James Madison and Alexander Hamilton in Federalist Papers 10 and 9, said political factions, meaning political parties, would be the unraveling of the republic because they would place their interests above the greater good of the nation, which is what I see with both Republicans and Democrats and other political factions in the United States and even the world, leading to political polarization and tribalism. So to me, having open dialogue to inform consensus of how to move forward between people and parties would be the best discourse moving forward to avoid tribalism and division. But that requires wise leadership, empathy, humility, and compromise between parties and leaders in order to configure consensus and agreement. So, in a time when it seems the nation is very divided, in the year 2020 that has placed stress and adversity on many in the form of COVID-19, a lesser pandemic that has created unemployment, social separation, and economic shutdowns, as well as unprecedented wildfires and smog, and even riots and looting throughout the country, understand that wise leadership, communication, and empathy between one another can ameliorate those issues and strengthen a nation. To me, cynicism seems more prevalent in American culture and politics more than ever. There's a saying from General James Mattis that goes, "Cynicism is cowardice, nothing more than a form of surrender." If a nation decides cynicism, apathy, and surrender are acceptable, then we will be rewarded with a nation of apathy and quitters. From my life experience, being rewarded with a life of a quitter is not something we would want for America. Now, the presidency of the United States gets disproportionately high attention from popular media and culture. The thing is, by design of the Constitution, Congress, both the United States House of Representatives and the Senate, have more power than the presidency. As well as an individual citizen, you have more influence over your local, state elections, as well as the federal level. So my point is, vote in the election. But don't just vote. Be a good human being. Make informed decisions, and if you are competent, intelligent, hardworking, and ethical, maybe even run for office, because I think the standard for our politicians and political leaders, in many respects, is absolutely abysmal. In a time when the nation seems more divided than ever, don't think the swapping of a president is going to fix a nation. A nation is comprised of individual citizens, and the best way to improve a nation is for everyone to do their part to contribute to the aggregate success of the nation. Don't allow politics and cynicism to affect our country and culture. The best thing you can do for the world is to maximize your potential so you can contribute as much as possible. Not only your own life, but your family's life, your community, this nation, and the world, because we all have a direct hand in shaping our future as a nation and a civilization, whether or not people want to take responsibility for that. So I hope everyone enjoyed this installment of the Eddie Holzman podcast. I mean, somewhat kind of heavier, but it's just my genuine thoughts. Much love. See you later. Feel free to subscribe, share this with your friends and family if you like it that much. I'll be coming out with more content, probably less political stuff, but yeah, I wish you best out there and much love and have a good one.